So today's look is this 10-minute super natural makeup look, and hopefully you guys get some inspiration for work. It's the complete opposite of the type of makeup that I would normally do for my Instagram, but this is a very realistic depiction of what I actually look like at work. I used to spend an hour and a half to 2 hours doing my makeup, which is so ridiculous, especially for an 8-hour shift ahead. Like, you just don't want to be spending that precious time doing your makeup. So hopefully you guys like this one. It's very different to what I normally do, but hopefully you learned something. First up is the Mercier Tinted Moisturiser in the oil-free version. I prefer this one so much more than the original formula. I feel like the original formula honestly is just a waste of time. It doesn't really cover anything, and I feel that way about a lot of tinted moisturizers. I just feel like they have no coverage whatsoever, that it's almost like really pointless, and you're better off using a concealer than wasting your money on a tinted moisturizer. As you can see, I'm just using my hands. It's nothing too complicated. I'll only be using 2 brushes for this look because for me, if I'm not doing a full glam, I just really couldn't care less. I really don't want to be using 1,000 things. That's the tinted moisturizer. All it does is really just even out my skin tone. I've really been liking it. I never thought I'd be a tinted moisturizer kind of person because I wore foundation for so long, but I've really been into this one. So next up is my favorite highlighter of all time. Usually I'll use this underneath foundation and then I'll layer a powder highlighter on top, but this time around, because there's so little steps in it, I'm actually going to use it on top of my tinted moisturizer so that I don't have to go back in with another powder highlighter. It'll just be my main highlighter. Now, you can use anything for this. You can use a liquid illuminator, you can use like a radiant primer underneath the tinted moisturizer, so you can skip this step. So then I just pop it on top of my cheekbone, and usually if you look into the mirror, you can kind of see where the light naturally hits, and you just want to really pop it on top of that. And then I usually take a little bit under the brow bone. As you can see, it's not glittery. That's what I really love about this cushion, is that it just gives you that wet skin sort of glow. Just make sure you get all the edges really well so that it doesn't look too harsh. Just pat it in with the sponge. For a long day of work, usually I try to dodge the nose because it naturally will just get oily. Lips, I don't mind on top of the cupid's bow, and on the chin is okay if you don't get too oily. But yeah, I really like this for a nice healthy glow without being sticky and too oily. I find that sometimes highlighters can be too glittery, too oily, or especially now that all these like natural brands are coming out with the ones that you can use with your fingers and stuff, they're all like coconut oil based, and I just find them to be really like icky, and I don't really like it, but I really like this one. So next up I have the Nars concealer, the soft matte concealer in Custard. This is like my ride or die concealer. I hydrate my face and my under eyes really well before I use this because it's almost like a cakey setting formula. You need to have really hydrated skin. If you don't have hydrated skin, I would suggest buying a concealer that is in the hydrating formula in a wand or a liquid that won't dry out the eyes as much. I like using this because 1, it lasts all day long, and 2, the coverage is incredible that I only need to use a little speck. I'm just gonna pop a little bit there. Oops, probably dragged it out too far. I don't even use the sponge for this because this formula is actually quite silky and smooth, but I will take it pretty much around the entire eye. There's a lot of discoloration around the eye, especially if you're someone like me and you don't get much sleep, then your eyes will be pretty much blue and purple all over. And then I'll start taking any sort of leftovers around the nose area and just sort of starting to blend it out. I sometimes take a little bit on the center of my forehead as well, and just a little bit down the nose. If you're having a good skin day, honestly, I think this concealer is all you need. You don't need too much as well, because this concealer is so full coverage. As you can see, it almost looks like I'm wearing a foundation. So the concealer is all done, and now I'm moving on to liquid bronzing. Now this is the liquid Laguna. This is obviously not the actual packaging. I depot or decan everything, so that's lighter in my kit. But this is the Nars liquid Laguna. It's like my ride or die. I feel like I use it as a base for a really full coverage makeup to really set that nice bronzy glow. I use it on very natural days as well because I feel like it gives me a really nice glow as well without having to use bronzing powders. So I just pump a little bit on the back of my hand, and I use a Real Techniques brush that I love for foundation, anything cream, but I love it. So where I go in with this is all along the forehead, because I find that my forehead is massive and I need to pull it back. If you've got a small forehead, please don't do what I'm doing because it'll just shorten your face, which is not really what we want. But because my face is huge, we can pack it on. I usually swipe a little bit around the eye just to lift the eye up. As you can see, the bronze pulled the eye back a little bit as opposed to that side. And then I'll just tap it on top of the cheekbone. I like a bronzy look. I don't want it to be too contoured because it's just a daytime look. Just pop it all over the cheekbone. I try not to smile because it distorts where the bronzer and the blush will go. So I know that tip is shared around a lot and I don't really think it works for a lot of people. If you've got any leftover on the brush, don't pump out more, just pop the rest underneath the jawline and you can dust a little bit under the nose just to tie everything in together. So next up I have the ILIA like multi-matte pigment. This is really nice. You can use it on your lips or on your cheeks. So a thing that I'll mention as well is that I'm using brushes and my fingers only for the concealer area. A lot of tutorials using creams and liquids online on TikTok and Instagram and stuff, all the people use their hands. I personally don't really like that. One, I find it to be really messy. I find it to be really sticky and icky as you keep going into other products. And then I also find that, especially with a rounder face like mine, things need to be in very specific areas because you're really accentuating the wrong parts of your face. If you're pulling it out too far, you're pulling it in too close. And so for me, everything that I do has a purpose. If you've got a really slim and you've got a really angular face, which is what most of the girls look like when they do these really beautiful videos that I see on Instagram, you can pop your makeup anywhere and you still look incredibly defined and chiseled. But for me, my face is much rounder, so everything I do has to have a purpose, and that's why I'm using these brushes. So I just take a little speck, like that much. So I just take the Real Techniques brush again that I use for the bronzer. Where I like to put my blush, especially liquid blushes, I like to pop it just underneath the high point of my cheeks. I don't like to put it on the high point on my cheeks because I feel like it just rounds out my face and makes it look even bigger. And then so once I've deposited that product there and I've got a nice blend, I will just take whatever's left over and pop it in the temple just to tie everything together. And sometimes I dust a little bit on the eyelids, but that initial color deposit, I'll pop it underneath the higher point of my cheeks. And as you can see, I'm doing tapping motions. I never swirl. So I'm gonna do my brows next. And I know I say I'll always do a brow tutorial, which I will. I will make a separate video and it is coming. This time around, it's actually coming. So I will hopefully link it below eventually. I'll just show you the product that I'm using anyway, but it's the Morphe Micro Brow Pencil in the color Latte. It's a couple of shades lighter than my brow hairs. I really prefer using pencils that are much lighter than my brow hairs because if you can see, my brows are really light and there's not a lot of hairs. So I tend to go back a lot and it gets dark very fast. So if I start off super light, by the time I'm done, it doesn't look like a block brow, which it can sometimes still, but I try to be careful. So 10 years later, I finally have my brows on and we're gonna get into mascara and lips and we're pretty much done. So I have my lash curler and my mascara. I only ever really use tubing mascaras, which is what this McoBeauty one is. I also used to use the Kevin Aucoin mascara, but it's just easier to get this one because you can get it at Woolies and it's always on sale. I really hate mascara that smudges. I really can't stand it. I'd rather just wear no mascara, to be honest with you, but my lashes are so short anyway, so if I don't wear mascara, it really doesn't matter. So I always like to line my lips. You can go ahead and just use gloss. It looks very natural when you don't have too much happening, but I just like shaping and overlining my lips. So I'm using the Freestyle pencil from Bareminerals. This is my favorite. As you can tell, there's not much left. So I'm really just focusing on the little M at the top, and then I'm doing like a W on the bottom. So once I'm pretty happy with the shape, it doesn't need to be perfect because sometimes I find that the gloss just kind of covers everything anyway. I'm going with the gloss. My lips are a little bit dry, but this gloss luckily just gives me a little bit of hydration. Didn't even show what gloss it was. It's the Glossier clear gloss. You can use any clear gloss, it really doesn't matter. I really like this one because it makes my lips look huge, but just a normal clear gloss is fine. And especially if you don't want that much volume in the lips, you should probably use something that's not as glossy as this. But this is like major gloss. So the makeup look is pretty much done, but I'm going to give you two more options that you can choose to add into the routine if you like. I'm going to pop bronzer into the eye socket, and then I'm also going to powder down the center of the face. Normally my skin is just fine like this. I like leaving it unpowdered because it means I can press out the creases in my concealer as opposed to powdering it down and setting it in stone, and I can't really do anything about it after. But sometimes you just need a bit of powder because it looks too greasy. So option one, I'm going to take the bronzer and I'm going to pop a little bit of it in the eye socket, and I'm just taking a fluffy blending brush for this. You don't want to use too much. I keep my eyes open as much as I can just to blend it out, because if you close your eyes, you're really distorting the look and it's just adding a bit of dimension. Sometimes I like to blend it a bit further out as well, just to connect it to the rest of the bronzer. But that's it. Second optional step is powdering down. I'm using the Hourglass translucent powder, and I really love this brush for just pressing it in. I don't dust it all over like that. You're going to move the makeup if you do that. Just pour it a little bit out, and then I'm going to just press it across the forehead, which is naturally where we get a little bit oily. It's just going to take up some of the shine, and then I'm going to dust it under here. But as you can see, that side compared to this side here, I personally prefer it without powder, so I'm just going to set it down a little bit with a bit of a spray, just to give it a bit more life again. But I would again suggest powder if you're very, very oily. It's a good idea. I mean, at the end of the day, everybody will get a bit of shine on the skin no matter what you do, especially if you're not baking the face. You just will get a bit of shine, but it's better to delay the shine than be shiny from the get-go if you're naturally oily. So I hope you guys enjoyed that tutorial. And as I said, this is not the makeup look that I would normally do on the weekend or for my clients. It's just a super simple, easy makeup tutorial for work, especially for a very long day at work and you don't want to be sitting on the train with like a full beat and you're like sweating and you're sitting next to other people. You just want to feel nice and light. This is it. So I hope you guys liked it.